Okay, so The Last of Us centers around a deadly infection caused by a fungi known as the cordyceps. These real-world parasites can often be found in nature, and what's most terrifying about The Last of Us is that there is basis in science for something like this to happen. Episode 1 of the HBO show opens with a scientist theorizing the rise of them all the way back in the 60s, and like he says, there is no cure. But where did the infection originate from, and how did it spread so quickly? Well, throughout this video, that's what we're going to be breaking down, and if you enjoy it, please hit the thumbs up button, and don't forget to subscribe for breakdowns like this every day. Out of the way, a huge thank you for clicking this. Now let's get into The Last of Us. Now, when looking at where it all started, I think the first place to go is of course the game. The PlayStation Classic doesn't give too much of a backstory of where it originated from, but there are teasers that can be found in documents. Early on, when looking through newspapers, we come across the Texas Herald, which report on the infection. On September 26, it said that admittance at hospitals was up 300%, and this was all due to a mysterious infection. The FDA also released a statement about contaminated crops, and they said that massive recalls were expected. This of course didn't happen, but the statement did give us a clue about what was really going on. It said, "The Food and Drug Administration investigation of crops potentially tainted with mold continues across the country. Initial lists distributed to vendors nationwide warned against crops imported from South America, but now the scope is extended to include Central America and also Mexico. So there are clues here that it's coming from countries with a hotter climate." This was teased at in the initial science report at the start, and 2003 is listed as being one of the hottest years on record. Although it's not in South America, we do hear reports in episode 1 that there's something strange going on in Jakarta. This Indonesian city is located in Asia, and they might have changed this from South America for us to explore it in a later episode. During filming of the show, people from Jakarta posted that things were being filmed in the city, so we could possibly see this coming down the line at some point. Indonesia actually houses the largest bread and flour factory in the world, so this could be the reason that the country was chosen to be the place it's housed. Anyway, I think the show will likely follow the same route, and there were several clues in the episode that this was attached to food products with flour in them. Firstly, we saw Mrs. Adler on her drive being fed it, and she later became one of the main infected people that Sarah encountered. Joel also said,
"But I'm on Atkins."
What now?
This is a diet that's low carb, and because of this, he'd be avoiding foods like bread and so on. I know it was said as a joke, yeah, before you start, but Atkins was brought up, I think, for a specific reason. Now, this date was also his birthday, but the pair never had a cake, which would also contain the ingredients. Tommy was gutted that they weren't having pancakes that morning, and they had bacon and eggs instead of things like cereal. Now, another big clue came when Sarah went to Mrs. Adler.
I was thinking we'd make some cookies.
Chocolate chip?
Raisin.
She was baking cookies, which would include the ingredients, but because they were raisin, Sarah didn't end up eating them. Now, this might not be the case, but the episode constantly kept hammering home the idea that they were avoiding food all the time, and those that ended up infected, of course, ended up eating it. Food being contaminated with cordyceps could explain how the virus managed to spread so quickly, especially if it was located in foods that people regularly ate. Flour is in a lot of products, and if it got into this, then it could easily spread across the planet. The game details that once the outbreak had happened, that 60% of humanity had either become infected or died within a couple of months. The cordyceps can of course be passed on through bites, and in the game we have the spores as well. This would massively push it across the planet and mean that the infection could spread really quickly. Now, as for the real life inspiration, there's actually a similar case that happened during the 50s. In Pont Saint-Esprit, a mass poisoning happened in which more than 250 people were infected by food. This was an illness that saw bread being infected by ergot, which is a fungus that grows on rye. This parasite spread onto the bread and thus into the food chain, which is where it was picked up by the mass population. At a bakery, the fungus contaminated the food, and this was then ate by the civilians that lived in the neighbouring villages. It brought on illness, and in some rare cases, even insanity. It took months for it all to build up, and there were bakers who suspected that something was in the flour. They named it cursed bread, and those who ate it had fits of vomiting and also diarrhea. More than 50 people were interned at an asylum, and the way that the infected go crazy in The Last of Us could be inspired by this. Now, there weren't any people going around becoming zombies and biting people, but there were some very, very strange occurrences. A man hallucinated that he was an aeroplane, and he jumped from his second-story window, which ended up killing him. As the scientist mentioned in episode 1, LSD is created using fungus, so it's easy to see how this happened. In addition to this, an 11-year-old boy attempted to strangle his own mother, and he lashed out in a violent rage brought on by the parasite. Later, doctors named this the Nuit d'Apocalypse, which translates to apocalyptic night, which I hope I pronounced right. Now, it's so chilling to hear stories like this, and you can see how real-life occurrences could end up inspiring what we see in the game and show. The main thing with the cordyceps is that they attach to your brain, and the parasites begin to override your motor functions. This is why we see people twitching and lashing out at others. The person is still in there, which is why the infected can often be found crying, but they don't have control over their desires anymore, and will attack all those that they see who aren't infected. Now, in the case of the ergot poisoning, the grains were inspected by the government's control board. They enforced rules in which it was difficult to purchase products containing flour, and the people were very much put on wartime shortages. The factory was charged with involuntary manslaughter, and an employee ended up being arrested. It was found in an inquiry that the flour mill in the area had been cutting corners, which, if you're going to start off a zombie apocalypse, it always happens because of that. Now, it turns out they'd been mixing rye in with the flour in order to be able to cut the amount of flour that they were using. They'd also been using the leftover piles that tend to be on the ground and beside the machines. Sometimes they were sat there for weeks, and these were prone to get infected with mites and ergot. Just all-round unsanitary conditions, and this led to this becoming a much bigger problem. People were charged for it, and all in all, it became a pretty big story in the area. If it's all connected to a food source, I can definitely see this being something that's linked in, and it is possible this ties in with how the infection spread. I don't know if you've seen Goth Merengue before, but I'll play the clip in a bit that I think basically sums up episode 1. It's an episode where water gets infected with something that turns people into apes, and they have a bit where some characters hilariously avoid drinking it by pure luck.
Morning, Dad. Morning, Thornton Reed.
Good morning.
Would either of you two like a glass of water?
No thanks, I'll have a coffee.
Thanks, Sanj. I'd love a glass.
Oh, drat, it's run out. Here, have mine.
No, Sanj, you have it. I'll grab a coffee instead of the water.
One coffee coming right up. Here you go.
Cheers.
Just something I thought of when going back and watching episode 1 and seeing people be like, I'll not have the cookies, I'll actually have the bacon and eggs. Hopefully they can get a shot which can help cure themselves. Not that kind of shot, dear me. And that's the video, which I hope you learned something in. I think the show will probably adapt this into the food stuff as it's in the game, and they do seem to be sticking pretty closely to the source material. Let me know below what you think, and if you have any other theories, I'd absolutely love to hear them. Now, we are in a competition right now and giving away Wakanda Forever to 3 subscribers on the 15th of February, and all you have to do to be in with a chance of winning is like the video, make sure you subscribe with notifications on, and drop a comment below with your thoughts and theories. We pick the comments at random at the end of the month, and the winners of the last one are on screen right now, so if that's you, then message me on Twitter at HeavySpoilers. If you want something else to watch, then make sure you check out our breakdown of the trailer for episode 2, which will be linked on screen right now. Lots of things going on in it, lots of theories, and yeah, definitely head over there right after this. Out of the way, thanks for sitting through the video. I've been Paul, I'll see you next time. Take care, peace.